Welcome the Lord's chosen. When people decide to harm you, the first sign isn't the danger, it's the sudden leak in their silence. There's something unsettling about how secrets behave around certain people, especially around those who are different, those who carry a presence that others can't quite explain. Plots that should stay airtight suddenly start cracking from the inside. Someone's conscience twitches. Someone's nerves break. Someone who swore to stay silent starts whispering louder than the people who made the plan in the first place. And here's a fact that fits this topic a little too well. Over 72% of criminal plots fall apart because somebody couldn't keep their mouth shut. That's the funny thing about evil. It has terrible teamwork skills. For all the coordination and fake confidence, there's always one person who starts panicking like they forgot their password in front of a crowd. Suddenly they're sweating, shaking, and acting like they're auditioning for a role in a crime documentary that hasn't even happened yet. But when it comes to individuals who stand out, those with a spiritual edge, a sharp awareness, or a life path that seems protected, the unraveling happens even faster. Not because they're looking for it, but because the universe refuses to let darkness get the final word. So instead of a clean, hidden operation, what happens? The same people who were plotting start becoming the ones who confess, expose, or report the whole thing, sometimes directly to you, sometimes straight to the police, sometimes by accidentally behaving so weirdly that you can practically see the guilt glowing off them like bad makeup in bright sunlight. There's suspense in this story, yes, but there's also a strange humor in how predictable human nature becomes when wickedness gets too heavy to carry. The truth is, when someone plans something extreme against a chosen soul, the plan doesn't just struggle, it starts falling apart from the moment it's born. And before long, someone, intentionally or not, is going to spill everything. This is where the real story begins. Number one, people plotting against you. Always leave a trail, because human evil is never clean. When people decide to do something harmful behind your back, they always think they're smarter than they actually are. They convince themselves that their plan is tight, silent, and invisible. But the truth is, evil has terrible housekeeping. It never stays neat, it never stays contained, and it never stays as hidden as the people behind it hope. Human beings simply aren't built to hold something dark with steady hands. The moment the plan forms, it starts leaking in ways they don't even notice. Someone's tone changes. Someone starts acting overly confident. Someone becomes too curious about your whereabouts or your routine. Somebody starts rehearsing their part in the plan through nervous jokes or offhand comments. They walk differently, talk differently, and behave like they're living two lives but only have the emotional capacity for one. These tiny cracks become the trail, not because they want to expose themselves, but because no person who carries malice can disguise the shift it creates inside them. They will always betray themselves without meaning to. And it doesn't stop there. The mind of someone plotting harm becomes unstable. They start slipping up in conversations. They forget who they lied to and who they told the truth. They push the wrong person too far. They share too much with someone they barely trust. They underestimate the listener. They overestimate their loyalty. Eventually, one of them hits their limit, whether it's guilt, fear, or just the pressure of being involved in something that heavy. That's when the trail gets louder, clearer, and harder for them to hide. Evil is messy because it requires people to act against their natural design. Human beings were not created to carry wickedness without consequences. That's why their plans always leak signs, whispers, behaviors, and confessions. The trail is never intentional. It's the unavoidable result of people trying to do something that their conscience, their instincts, and their nervous system can't fully support. So even when you're unaware, the truth is already making its way to you. because people plotting behind you will always leave breadcrumbs. They can't help it. Human evil simply isn't clean. Number 2, the person who exposes the plot is usually one of the quiet onlookers who thought you didn't matter. The warning never comes from the person you expect. It rarely comes from a friend, and almost never from an enemy. Instead, it comes from that person who stood on the sidelines of your life, someone who never paid you much attention, never interacted with you deeply, and probably assumed you were just another face in the background. They didn't think you were special, important, or even memorable, but these are the people who end up being closest to the truth without even trying. Quiet onlookers have a strange advantage. They blend in, they observe without pressure, they hear things because no one is paying attention to them. The planners don't fear them, so they talk freely around them. They vent, they brag, or they slip up in front of them because they think this quiet person is insignificant. What they don't realize is that these are the people who catch the details no one else notices. They're not emotionally invested, which makes their perspective clean and unfiltered. And something changes in them when the plan goes too far. At first, they may ignore it or brush it off, but as soon as they grasp the seriousness of what's being discussed, something inside them wakes up. Suddenly, the person they overlooked, you, becomes real to them. They realize this isn't just gossip or drama. It's a life at stake. And that realization hits harder when it involves someone they didn't expect to be targeted. That shock becomes their turning point. They come forward not because they love you, but because the situation disturbs something in them. Their conscience kicks in. Their curiosity turns to worry. Their silence becomes uncomfortable. And before long, they're the one delivering the message, the warning, the clue, the confession that blows the whole plan open. It's ironic, but the person who thought you didn't matter becomes the one who saves you from something you never saw coming. That's the strange way life works. The overlooked witness becomes the unexpected protector, simply because they were in the right place, hearing the wrong thing, and eventually couldn't stay quiet. Number 3, evil plans against you don't stay hidden, because the wrong people get confident too early. Every plan, no matter how carefully crafted, carries a ticking time bomb, the arrogance of those who believe they are untouchable. When people set out to harm someone, they act like geniuses in their own story, like they've thought of every angle and left nothing to chance. But the moment confidence turns into cockiness, the plan starts to crumble. Human beings have a strange way of betraying themselves the second they think they're winning. That misplaced bravado is what exposes everything. Confidence makes people sloppy. They start walking differently, speaking differently, and interacting differently. They laugh too loudly, brag too openly, and reveal tiny details they thought were secret. They slip into patterns that only an observant person or someone who isn't part of the plan can notice. It's almost like their body language and tone can't contain the thrill of imagined success, and that excitement spills into actions they cannot retract. The danger of overconfidence is psychological. As soon as someone believes the outcome is already theirs, their mind stops working critically. They assume loyalty where it doesn't exist, underestimate your awareness, and ignore small but crucial signals. They forget that plans exist in a world full of unpredictable people who can hear, see, and act in ways they didn't account for. Their own ego becomes the weak link, and that's often all it takes for the first cracks to appear. Eventually, that early confidence sparks panic in someone else involved. They start questioning the risks, realizing the consequences, or simply wanting to save themselves. That's when the plan starts unraveling in real time. The one who felt untouchable becomes the one who's exposed, either by accident or because another participant can't stand being part of something so reckless. No matter how secretive, no matter how meticulous, a plan built on human arrogance is doomed from the start. The wrong people will always get too comfortable, too proud, and too confident. And once that happens, the entire scheme begins to collapse, sometimes even before it can be fully carried out. Confidence in evil is like gasoline near a spark. It ignites chaos faster than anyone expects. Number 4, someone will tell on them because they realize you didn't deserve it. There's an invisible line in every human mind, a line between what they can stomach and what they cannot. Most people plotting against you start with jealousy, fear, or greed. They think taking you down is a solution to their problem. They convince themselves that harming you is justified, necessary, or even clever. But at some point, someone involved in the plan realizes the cold truth. You never deserved any of this. That realization hits hard, like a sudden jolt that makes them see the plan for what it really is, pure malice. When this happens, the exposure doesn't come from strategy or heroism. It comes from conscience, or at least a sliver of it. That person understands that no amount of scheming or secrecy can justify what they're about to do. They start noticing details they had ignored: how you've lived your life quietly, how you've helped people without expecting recognition, how you carry yourself with a dignity they cannot imitate, and that quiet respect, that invisible aura of decency, clashes violently with the ugliness of their plan. Once the truth lands in their mind, they can't act the same way anymore. They begin to slip up. Their nervousness becomes apparent. Their words start carrying hints they didn't intend, and their loyalty to the plot fractures. They may start warning others indirectly, leaving breadcrumbs, or even deciding to speak out fully. It isn't courage in the traditional sense. It's the unavoidable reaction of someone confronting the injustice of what they were about to do. Even in circles of cold calculation, there's almost always one person who refuses to participate in cruelty. That person becomes the leak, the voice, the whistleblower. They speak, not to save you because they knew you personally, but because they can't stomach the idea of undeserved harm being done. It's the natural human refusal to watch injustice play out, a primal reaction stronger than loyalty, fear, or greed. In the end, no matter how well crafted, no matter how hidden, plans against you fail because morality, even in small doses, intervenes. Someone always steps in, guided not by strategy, but by the simple, undeniable fact that you never deserved it. Number 5, the more spiritually aware you are, the faster other people can sense the consequences of touching you. There's a force around some people that isn't visible, isn't spoken about, and can't be measured, yet everyone feels it. It's subtle, almost like a vibration in the air, and it acts as an invisible shield. When someone tries to plot against a person who carries this kind of presence, their actions don't land cleanly. It's not luck or coincidence. There's an unseen weight that makes the plan heavier, the lies louder, the nerves quicker to crack. People around you can feel the tension building long before anything actually happens, and that awareness alone makes the plot brittle. Spiritually aware people have a way of radiating boundaries without words. It's in the way they move, the decisions they make, and even the quiet confidence that doesn't need explanation. When malicious intentions are directed toward them, those around the schemers, people who might otherwise have stayed silent, start picking up on danger signals. There's a sense that interfering with this person will trigger repercussions, not just socially or legally, but on a deeper, almost instinctual level. That fear alone can make someone step forward, speak out, or intervene, even if they have no personal stake in the matter. This awareness doesn't just protect you, it exposes the weaknesses of the planners. Their confidence wavers because they subconsciously sense forces they cannot control. The group that thought it was clever begins to fray from the inside. Lies get tangled, stories shift, panic starts creeping in. And when someone in that group finally decides to reveal the plan, it often happens suddenly, unexpectedly, because the spiritual weight around you has already set things in motion. Being spiritually aware isn't about powers or rituals. It's about a presence that commands respect and subtly influences the energy around you. It's why people who try to harm you can feel the consequences before anything happens, why someone inevitably breaks ranks, and why plots against you rarely stay hidden for long. The universe, in its subtle ways, ensures that those who are meant to stand out are rarely removed unnoticed, and human weakness becomes the instrument through which destiny protects you. Number 6, someone will tell on them, because they realize you have more influence than they thought. People who plot against you often underestimate your reach, your presence, and the subtle ways you impact the world around you. They think they are operating in shadows, confident that no one notices you, that no one pays attention, that you exist in isolation. But the moment someone involved in the plan realizes just how much influence you hold, how many people listen to you, respect you, or are quietly watching, they panic. That panic is what turns a secret into a confession, a quiet plot into an exposed scheme. Influence isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's in the way you inspire people quietly, how your actions ripple through your community, or the respect you command without demanding it. For the planners, this becomes terrifying once they recognize it. They see that harming you doesn't just affect one life. It sets off reactions, conversations, and consequences they never accounted for. Suddenly, the idea of carrying out the plan doesn't seem clever. It seems reckless. The person who was once silent, complicit, or observing begins to reconsider their loyalty. They see the potential fallout, not just for themselves, but for the schemers as well. The higher your influence, the louder the echo of any harm directed at you. That realization makes them nervous, and nerves are dangerous in secrecy. Nervous people talk, they slip, they reveal, they confess. Even one misstep can unravel the entire operation. And it's not about admiration or fear of you personally. It's about the recognition that your existence matters in ways the conspirators didn't predict. They didn't account for the network of eyes and ears you've naturally built, or the subtle power you carry without knowing it. Once someone in the group sees that, their role shifts. They may warn others, tip off authorities, or directly expose the plan because self-preservation becomes intertwined with an awareness of your real impact. No plot survives when influence is underestimated. The very force that makes you significant also protects you, often through the weakest link in the chain, the person who suddenly realizes that your presence changes everything, and that their silence could cost more than they're willing to risk. Number 7, the plot unravels. Because one person wants to save themselves before the others. No matter how tightly a plan is constructed, there's always one person thinking about themselves first. Human nature is wired for self-preservation, and when a plot involves serious risk, that instinct becomes impossible to ignore. Someone in the group begins to weigh the consequences of being caught, punished, or implicated. The more dangerous the plan, the more likely it is that someone cracks, not out of morality, loyalty, or fear of divine justice, but simply because they want to survive while the others are still committed to the scheme. This self-preservation instinct often works in subtle ways. At first it might be small, almost imperceptible, questions that seem innocent, curiosity about the timing, or casual probing about who else knows. But these small cracks grow. The person starts quietly gathering information, testing boundaries, and preparing for the moment when they can step away or reveal the truth without being hurt themselves. They become unpredictable because their goal is no longer the success of the plot. It's their own safety. The irony is that the one trying to save themselves is often the first person to expose the plan. Their fear of being the scapegoat, their anxiety about potential consequences, or their desire to avoid imprisonment or disgrace forces them to act before anyone else. They tip someone off, leave clues, or directly confess, dismantling the entire scheme from the inside. The planners, who believed in collective secrecy, suddenly realize that human instinct is stronger than their loyalty. One weak link is enough to break everything. This is why plots against individuals, especially those who are aware or significant in some way, rarely succeed. Even when evil seems organized, the natural human instinct to protect oneself intervenes. It doesn't matter how clever, careful, or ruthless the conspirators are. Someone in the group will always decide that survival matters more than the plan. That one person, driven by fear, becomes the invisible force that shatters the scheme, ensuring that the plot never reaches its intended outcome. Human self-preservation is both predictable and unstoppable, and it often acts as the secret safeguard for those targeted. Number 8, people reveal these plots because they realize hurting you won't solve the group's real problem. When people plot against someone, it's rarely about the person alone. Their schemes are born from jealousy, insecurity, fear, or a desire to cover their own failures. They convince themselves that taking you down will fix everything, that removing you will erase their pain, elevate their status, or solve some imagined injustice. But eventually, someone in the group begins to see the truth. Hurting you changes nothing. It doesn't erase their problems, it doesn't satisfy their insecurities, and it certainly doesn't make them happier. That realization becomes a turning point. The person who sees this first starts noticing cracks in the logic of the plot. They understand that the harm being planned isn't a solution. It's a distraction from the real issues. The more they reflect, the more uncomfortable they feel, and the weight of complicity starts pressing down. That pressure is almost unbearable because human beings are wired to recognize futility and injustice when it's right in front of them. They begin to question why they are part of something that solves nothing but amplifies risk. This cognitive dissonance, the conflict between participating in harm and recognizing its pointlessness, pushes someone to act. They may start subtly undermining the plan, leaving hints or even warning others. Their motivation isn't necessarily moral courage. It's the simple realization that being part of this scheme serves no purpose. Once they recognize that the plan won't fix the group's deeper problems, the tension becomes unbearable. The plot is already unstable, and their actions tip it over the edge. Plans against a chosen person often fail because they underestimate the clarity that comes with reflection. When someone involved stops seeing the act as meaningful, their fear of consequences, combined with the understanding that the plot achieves nothing, drives them to reveal it. They expose the scheme, not because they love you, but because human beings are instinctively repelled by futility and injustice. Hurting you doesn't solve their problems. It only creates new ones. That is why, even in secretive groups, one person always steps forward, dismantling the plot and preserving the natural order of consequences. Number 9, the universe pushes the right person to speak, because destiny never allows a chosen one to be removed illegally. There's a force that operates beyond human understanding, a current that guides events and people in ways that often feel coincidental, but are anything but. When someone sets out to harm a chosen individual, it's not just a personal or earthly battle. It's a disturbance in the natural order. That disturbance triggers responses in people who might otherwise seem unrelated, random, or even insignificant. Someone ends up hearing a conversation, noticing a detail, or feeling compelled to act in a way that exposes the plot. It's as if destiny has a built-in mechanism to protect those it has chosen. This intervention doesn't always look dramatic or obvious. It's subtle, operating through the flaws, fears, and decisions of human beings. One person in the group begins to hesitate. Another overestimates loyalty. Someone slips a crucial piece of information, and suddenly the plan begins to unravel. These are the instruments through which protection operates. The right person emerges almost naturally, guided by factors they may not even understand. It's not heroism or bravery. It's circumstance and timing aligning perfectly with a higher order. Destiny doesn't allow removal through illegal or immoral means. If someone tries to disrupt the path of a chosen one, it activates consequences that ripple outward. Conspirators find themselves exposed by their own mistakes, and someone who wasn't originally involved in the situation may become the whistleblower. This person acts not because they were instructed or aware of the larger cosmic plan, but because the universe uses human unpredictability as a tool to enforce protection. For every plot designed to take down a chosen individual, there's a built-in fail-safe. The people capable of speaking out, whether by accident, fear, or instinct, are drawn forward at the exact right time. The very act of plotting against a chosen soul sets forces into motion that cannot be contained. Plans collapse, secrets are revealed, and the intended victim remains untouched, not because of luck or coincidence, but because destiny has a way of bending human weakness into protection. The universe ensures that the chosen cannot be removed illegally, and it always finds the right vessel to intervene at the perfect moment. Number 10. The people planning against you. Underestimate how much the community actually likes you. Those who plot against a chosen individual almost always misread the world around them. They think their target is isolated, unnoticed, or unimportant. They assume their whispers and secret schemes exist in a vacuum. What they fail to realize is that you've built subtle connections, left impressions, and earned respect in ways they cannot see. People notice more than they admit. Even the quiet gestures, the small acts of kindness, and the moments of integrity accumulate. Your presence resonates, often in ways that go unnoticed, until someone is pushed to act. This miscalculation is the hidden flaw in every plot. The conspirators believe the world around you is neutral, that no one will speak up, and that the consequences will be contained. They forget that influence isn't always loud. People don't have to shout to care, and admiration doesn't have to be visible to be powerful. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, even casual acquaintances can feel when someone is being targeted, especially someone who carries a quiet strength. That hidden support becomes the pressure point that causes the plan to unravel. When people see a chosen individual being harmed, the reactions are unpredictable. Someone who seemed indifferent might suddenly act. Someone who never expected to be involved feels compelled to intervene. The conspirators never count on the network of unseen observers who notice patterns, detect tension, or intuit danger. That unnoticed web of loyalty and respect becomes a safeguard, often in ways the plotters cannot anticipate. The irony is that the more invisible your influence appears, the more effective it is at dismantling attacks against you. While the planners focus on their perceived control, the community silently watches, analyzes, and eventually reacts. One slip, one act of courage, one realization of injustice, and the plot is exposed. The people around you, those you didn't even realize were paying attention, become the instruments through which protection manifests. Underestimating how much you are valued is a fatal flaw in any scheme. It's the blind spot that ensures no plan against you remains hidden for long. Influence and respect, even when understated, act as invisible shields, quietly enforcing protection, while the conspirators remain unaware of the forces aligned against them. Number 11. Someone will reveal the plot, because they saw a side of the conspirators that terrified them. People who plan harm often think that fear is only on the other side, that you should be afraid, that you should worry, that the threat you face is theirs to control. What they don't account for is how their own actions reflect their true character, and how terrifying that can appear to someone involved. There's always a moment when one participant, the one who wasn't sure, the one who followed along because they felt pressure or loyalty, witnesses something raw, extreme, or unexpected in the others. That moment changes everything. Seeing true malice up close can have a disorienting effect. It's not about conscience or morality at first. It's about instinctual fear. The conspirators might show a side of cruelty, ruthlessness, or disregard for human life that is impossible to ignore. It's in the coldness of their words, the gleam of excitement in their eyes, the way they treat risk and violence like a game. Witnessing that intensity triggers a reaction in someone who hadn't fully grasped the stakes. They suddenly recognize that they are part of something darker than they intended, something they cannot control or rationalize away. Fear of the conspirators' own extremity forces action. The person who realizes the danger doesn't wait to see how events unfold. They feel compelled to act before it's too late. Their exposure of the plan often happens abruptly because the psychological weight of being involved in such darkness becomes unbearable. Every glance, every word, every tiny sign of brutality or obsession pushes them closer to breaking their silence. This is why plots against chosen individuals rarely stay hidden. The very human reaction to extreme evil, fear, self-preservation, and shock, becomes the mechanism of protection. The conspirators' own intensity, which they believed would secure success, ironically ensures their downfall. Someone within the group inevitably perceives the danger not just to the target, but to themselves and the balance of right and wrong, and that perception drives them to reveal the plot. In the end, extreme behavior exposes plans faster than any external investigation. Terror in human eyes becomes the catalyst for confession, and the very threat intended to intimidate the world instead becomes the force that dismantles the scheme. Number 12. People will tell on them because secrets get heavy and human beings crack under pressure. Every secret carries weight, but some secrets are heavier than others. Planning harm against someone is one of the heaviest burdens a human mind can carry. It isn't just the logistics or the fear of getting caught. It's the psychological strain of holding evil in your hands and pretending it doesn't exist. The tension grows every day, mounting quietly in the minds of those involved. Even the most confident conspirator begins to feel the invisible pressure, the weight of what they know, and the constant calculation of risk. Eventually, the weight becomes unbearable and people crack. Humans are not built to carry moral tension indefinitely. Lies pile on top of lies, stories get tangled, and memories of what was said or promised start to blur. People lose sleep, become anxious, and overthink everything. That internal pressure starts spilling out in ways they can't control, through nervous gestures, accidental comments, or slips of the tongue. One small crack is all it takes for the entire structure to fall apart. Someone who was silent suddenly finds themselves speaking, not because they planned to, but because their mind can't endure the burden any longer. The heavier the secret, the faster it breaks a person. Even those who lack morality often find that human instinct for self-preservation or mental relief outweighs loyalty to a harmful plan. The fear of punishment, the guilt of complicity, or simply the unbearable tension drives someone to act. They leak information, confess, or tip someone off, effectively dismantling the scheme from within. This is why plots against chosen individuals rarely succeed in secrecy. The psychological toll of plotting harm creates invisible cracks that are impossible to ignore. Human beings, no matter how calculating, have a breaking point. That pressure point inevitably triggers revelation. Secrets meant to protect the conspirators instead betray them. The very act of plotting creates the mechanism for exposure, and the unbearable weight of hidden evil ensures that someone will always step forward to reveal the truth. Number 13, harmful plans fall apart. When the wrong person gets emotionally attached to your existence. Sometimes the failure of a plot isn't about skill, secrecy, or vigilance. It's about human emotion. In any scheme, there's always someone who develops an unexpected connection to the person being targeted. It doesn't have to be deep or obvious. It could be admiration, fascination, respect, or even a strange sense of kinship. That subtle emotional attachment, often unrecognized even by the person who feels it, becomes a critical vulnerability in the conspirator's plan. When someone starts caring, whether consciously or unconsciously, they begin to act differently. Their loyalty to the plan falters, their judgment wavers, and their nerves show. They notice details that others ignore. They hesitate at critical moments, and they can no longer participate in the scheme with the same cold efficiency. The plan, which seemed airtight in theory, begins to unravel because human emotion is unpredictable, uncontrollable, and impossible to suppress when something or someone moves you. This emotional interference doesn't need to be overt. It manifests in small ways: hesitation in conversation, subtle warnings, accidental slips, or choosing not to act when they should. Those tiny acts accumulate, creating cracks in the conspiracy that grow until the whole scheme is exposed. The conspirators, focused on logistics and control, rarely anticipate this internal vulnerability. They forget that human beings are not machines, and that emotion, once involved, has a power that trumps secrecy and fear. The irony is that this emotional bond is often what saves the target without anyone planning it. The person with unexpected attachment becomes an unintentional protector, revealing the plot or tipping off the authorities simply because they cannot reconcile harming someone they feel connected to. It isn't about morality or strategy. It's about instinct, empathy, and the subtle, irresistible pull of human feeling. In the end, no matter how meticulous the scheme, the presence of emotional attachment guarantees vulnerability. Human feelings are impossible to predict or control, and they often intervene at exactly the right moment. The very plan intended to destroy someone becomes undone because one person cannot suppress a connection that suddenly makes harming you unbearable. Number 14, a plot to harm a chosen one. Always attracts divine interference through human weakness. Whenever someone tries to target a chosen individual, the plan rarely unfolds the way the schemers imagine. There's a force at work beyond human perception, something that uses ordinary people, their fears, flaws, and instincts, to intervene. Divine intervention doesn't always come as a miracle or a dramatic act. Often it works quietly, through the very weaknesses of those involved in the plot. One conspirator becomes anxious, another slips in their loyalty, someone panics, or a minor mistake triggers a chain reaction. That's how the universe protects those it has chosen, by turning human imperfection into a safeguard. The conspirators often think they are clever, calculating, and untouchable. They underestimate the ripple effect that their actions create. Every plan has a point of vulnerability, and when it targets a chosen one, that vulnerability becomes a conduit for intervention. The person least expected to act suddenly becomes the vessel of truth, revealing the plan either accidentally or consciously. Divine interference rarely forces its way through brute force. Instead, it leverages what's already there, human error, fear, or conscience, and bends it toward protection. This is why plots against significant individuals rarely stay hidden or succeed. The universe ensures that the chosen cannot be removed illegally, and it does so by exploiting the predictable patterns of human weakness. Panic, guilt, overconfidence, doubt, or moral conflict within the group is amplified at the exact right moment, and someone inevitably steps forward. Even the most meticulous plan cannot account for the subtle ways destiny intervenes, using ordinary people as instruments of justice and protection. In the end, harming a chosen person triggers forces that cannot be controlled. The conspirator's own flaws become the mechanism through which the plan collapses. One person talks, one mistake exposes the scheme, and the intended harm fails. Divine interference doesn't need to shout. It operates quietly, efficiently, and through ordinary channels, making sure the chosen survive. The plot itself becomes the instrument of its own failure, proving that attempts to remove someone destined for greatness will always be met with intervention, often through the very humans involved in the scheme. When people set out to harm a chosen individual, what seems like a carefully crafted plan is never as secure as it appears. Human nature, with all its flaws, emotions, and instincts, becomes the first line of defense. Arrogance, fear, conscience, and even unexpected emotional bonds create cracks that widen until the entire scheme collapses. The quiet observer, the morally conflicted conspirator, and the one who underestimates your influence all play a role in exposing the truth. Beyond that, there's a subtle force, destiny, divine protection, or the natural balance of the universe that ensures those who are meant to stand cannot be removed illegally. Every misstep, every slip, and every hesitation works like dominoes, unraveling the plan before it reaches its goal. The beauty of this reality lies in its unpredictability. Evil can plot, scheme, and manipulate, but it cannot override the unseen currents of justice, human instinct, or the hidden loyalty and respect surrounding a chosen one. Attempts to harm you will always trigger responses from ordinary people acting out of conscience, fear, or emotional attachment to forces beyond comprehension that protect, expose, and neutralize the threat. The conspirator's confidence, secrecy, and perceived control ultimately become the very elements that lead to their failure. It's a profound reminder that no matter how hidden, no matter how clever, plans built on malice are doomed to crumble. So if you've ever felt targeted, underestimated, or alone, remember this. The universe, human nature, and unseen connections are always working in your favor. Protection is rarely visible, yet it is always present. Even the darkest intentions have a way of revealing themselves through cracks, mistakes, and unexpected champions. Your path is safeguarded, your life is observed, and your existence matters in ways that ripple far beyond what you can see. If this insight resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share this video to spread awareness. And make sure to subscribe to the channel for more deep, revealing truths that empower and protect those who are meant to rise. Stay